On this really grim subject, which has never gone away, has it? Do you understand the police union's concerns here?
Absolutely. I think that our Prime Minister and our Home Secretary should be taking the concerns of the French border force extremely seriously. Actually, it's interesting because their concerns echo directly the same concerns that have been raised by our own British border force. These are the people who actually are there on the ground, who witness the incredibly dangerous and distressing sights of, these men, women and children on these little dinghies in this dangerous water. They have to drag people, and sometimes I'm afraid to say bodies, out of the water day in, day out. They know the dangers of these circumstances, and they should not be expected to carry out operations that will put people's lives in greater danger. So I think we should be taking this message from the French police extremely seriously, and we should be revisiting our approach. It clearly is not the right one if the people who are charged with enacting it are so afraid of being prosecuted for causing deaths.
Do you think there should be any attempts to stop these boats at all?
Again,
there could be a number of reasons why, including the safety of the people on board. But for some people, that isn't their priority, is it? Their priority is, we don't want them to come to our shores.
And it's really important that you highlight that, actually, because one priority is stopping the boats, because we don't want people risking their lives, and we don't want people arriving without knowing who they are and without an ordered system for their arrival. Another thing is that we just don't want people to arrive at all in the UK. And one of those things I would argue is achievable and is very important. The other thing, I'm afraid, we've seen over the last 40 years of attempted cooperation with the French on militarizing the border, that it is not achievable. It's not realistic, because there isn't an alternative way for people to make it to the UK. So I think that we can and absolutely should be doing everything we can to cooperate with the French in order to stop the boats. What that looks like in terms of what the evidence tells us is providing people with a meaningful alternative way to get here. One that is safe, one that is regulated, and one that bypasses these smugglers. And that's actually what our own border force agents are calling for. Our own border force agents have put out a call with a really well thought through plan for a safe route based on what we did for Ukrainians, so that people could apply to come in an orderly and safe way to the UK, so that they don't have to be the ones dragging these bodies out of the water.
Shelagh Mahmood, when she made that announcement just a few weeks before Christmas about various asylum and migration changes that we only got the partial picture then. There's going to be more in the new year, isn't there?
There always is.
Yeah, but one of the things you alluded to was new routes or more established routes. Now, the countries that most of these asylum seekers on the boats are coming from are Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Eritrea, and Sudan. Are there any established legal routes that people can seek asylum?
There is no meaningful way for people from Iraq, Eritrea, Sudan, and so on to seek asylum in the UK. There simply isn't. We don't grant people who are likely to receive refugee protection any type of visa to come to the UK. So what I'm worried about with this announcement about safe routes, obviously I support it. The problem is that, I don't know if your listeners heard about how the government announced they were capping bus fares at £3 in London, and actually bus fares used to be capped at £2 in London, so they can announce a cap, but the cap means we're spending more. So it's just a sort of spin on things. They're talking about safe routes now, but up until now there have been safe routes. For example, there was family reunification. So if somebody was recognized as being a refugee who had escaped from torture or from war or persecution, they would have been entitled to bring their wife or husband and their children, if they were under 18, to live with them in the UK. This government has taken away that safe route. Now they say they're going to look at introducing some new safe routes. They've also suggested that these routes would be capped at potentially a couple of hundred per year. I'm afraid that simply isn't going to touch the sides of what's necessary, and anybody who's being realistic knows that. Also, safe routes need to be targeted at the people who would otherwise take the unsafe routes, if they are going to actually replace the unsafe routes. So it would be great to have another resettlement scheme for people from Sudan, for example. But if we don't have a scheme that directly targets the people who are otherwise going to take the boats, then the boats will keep coming.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because those who are taking the boats are people with money. Does that mean if you're from Eritrea and poor, you've just got to stay there?
Well, when you say people with money, we're talking about...
Well, they've got enough money to give thousands of pounds to smugglers.
So
I'm not saying their life is great when I say that. They just have enough money to do that.
That's
Plenty
true.
of people in Sudan, Eritrea, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan would not be able to do that. Do we just turn our backs on them?
Absolutely not. And that's why I would support, obviously, strongly support resettlement schemes that would help people directly in the region. But I do think that when you say they have money, you're right. But this is usually people whose whole family have pooled all of their savings, possibly sold their house, all their possessions, in order to pay for this smuggling route for one of them to make it across to safety, often in the hope that then they would be able to be rejoined maybe by their immediate family members, which this government has taken away. So yes, they have some resources, but it is, we're talking about people in very desperate circumstances still. So I do think we need to take a combined approach, and frankly a realistic approach, that these people will continue to come here because these smuggling routes cannot be entirely shut down.
Some people will be listening to you and thinking, I'll tell you what a realistic approach is. A realistic approach is accepting that as things stand in our country at the moment, we don't have enough services, we don't have enough houses. In some places, in terms of housing and schooling, whatever, we don't have enough spaces. That's not true everywhere, but it is in some places. And the realistic approach is we have to stop these boats from arriving. I wonder how far we are away. You've made your case for safer routes. We are told some of them are going to be announced. We'll see what the nature of that is. But I wonder how far away we are from people putting increasing political pressure on the government of the day and other politicians to forget what France are doing and just get much, much firmer ourselves about those boats.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that logic, right? People say, well, we just need to stop the boats. The problem is stopping something that's already illegal, that we already spend hundreds of millions of pounds trying to, physically prevent every single year. Like we can say, oh, we should just stop it. The government has tried very, very hard. In fact, not just this government, successive governments for 40 years have been trying without cease to stop it. They have cut the rights of the people who come here time and time again. They have militarized and invested huge quantities of our money in this border operation time and time again. The fact of the matter is there isn't a safe country that has opportunity for people where there isn't immigration. And the UK has strong ties all around the world. I appreciate what you say about the strain on services, but the fact of the matter is that actually the strain on our public services, especially our NHS, are much more so caused by the fact that our population is getting older, and there are far more people who are older and need and deserve a greater level of medical care and social care than it is caused by immigrants who are largely younger and largely staff those services. So if we want to support our public services, and we should be doing that, then we need to be doing that with immigration, and we can manage it much better.